going to invite some of my guests onto the stage. First up, we have my fellow Brit and world record holder, Nick Butter. During his career, if you'd like to make your way up, Nick. During his career, he's run over 70,000 miles, which, Nick, that makes me feel slightly nauseous, but please take your seat. And next up, we have Olympic athlete Mana Patel, who represents India. Mana, please come up. Who represented India as a swimmer at Tokyo 2020. Mana has held records, hi, nice to meet you, records in the 50, 100, 200 meter. And lastly, we have Seda Kajan, who has made history. Please make your way up, Seda. Who has made history by becoming the first female pilot to run a race in Turkey's track championship. So welcome and thank you so much for joining us. So, Seda, I'd like to start with you because I know we brought you on slightly last minute, so thank you so much for being able to join us. And I think you really epitomize what this next form is about. You're a young Turkish athlete who went against the odds and became one of the only female track championship champions in Turkey in history. So I want to go back to the beginning. I want to find out your initial first memories when you started growing love for the sport. And I know we don't have that many female idols for you to look up to. You know, what made you start on this journey?
Of course. And thank you for having me here, first of all. Mine is not an ordinary case, I say, because I grown up in a really small city in Turkey called Kırklareli. And there is no even a fun karting place to go. So no one around me was interested in motorsports, and no one even knowing that we can do it in Turkey. So I can say that it was something inside me since childhood, because I remember that I asked and played the Need for Speed computer game. It was my first computer game, but I don't know why. And I remember that while I was 11, I was just, trying to steal my dad's car. I'm not recommending it, but there was always something like a car love inside me. But unfortunately, I couldn't discover it until I was 27. I was just, interrogating myself, how I feel alive, what do I living for, and I found that passion and motorsports love inside me, and then I started to search, and I discovered that there is no female driver in the track championship, etc. And I just wanted to try my chance.
Well, you certainly did. Steal your dad's car, I'm not sure I'd be able to do that. And Nick, I'm sure you didn't steal your dad's running shoes. But you've run a marathon in every single country, 196. I mean, I've never heard anyone doing that. You've talked about in your book, Running the World, about these huge experiences from running in 40 Celsius temperatures to running past an erupting volcano. But to go back to the beginning, what I want to know is, how did you initially start that journey before you continued to have that journey throughout the world?
Yeah, good question. Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. I got into running, I think, because when you're young and you live in the countryside, like I know you do as well, you get out and you enjoy the fresh air. My journey, I guess, in a nutshell, I was a skier, a GB skier before I was a runner. I gave up skiing to get a real job. I got a real job in the bank, and I didn't hate it, but it wasn't a calling. And I had that inner voice of go and do what you love, go back to sport. And I used running as a bit of a therapy to get out of it. And so lunchtimes, pre-work, after work, get out, do some running, and 500, 600, 700 marathons later, I had opportunities to have some sponsors and to do various bits and pieces. And it was that mission, one big race I did in the Sahara Desert, that I met somebody who inspired me to make a bit of a difference, look into myself a little bit about what I was doing, and turn my love of sport into a career. And then, skip forward several years and a few world records, and what have I done now? 1,013 marathons. So,
Wow.
a few little jogs.
So it's interesting you talk about the countryside. My dad used to march me up the Lake District Mountains. For everyone who doesn't know, this is the most beautiful part in the UK. Did you also have the same effect? Did your dad race you up those mountains from a young age?
In the Lake District too, yes. Yeah, Cornwall, the Lake District, all over Britain and in Europe, actually. They were just outdoorsy people, as I'm sure your parents were also, but also travel. So there was lots of travel when we were young. My parents were all over the world on their honeymoon, for example, and so I decided to follow in their footsteps and combine running with the travel, yeah.
Well, on the theme of parents, we move on to Mana. How supportive were your family in your dream? And I know I've read you started swimming at just the age of 7. Was that through their support, or did you always have a dream to be a swimmer and compete at the Olympics?
Well, thank you for having me, and thanks for the lovely introduction. But yeah, no one from my family ever decided that I'd play a sport, and particularly swimming, But as a kid, my appetite was poor, and I never really used to eat properly. So my mom thought, okay, maybe if she plays in the water for some time, she'll come out and eat properly. So that was the only reason I started swimming, and well, nothing much has changed about that. But now I enjoy the sport a lot more. I started enjoying when I was a kid. That's why we decided to, continue. And when I was 10, I joined a professional swim club because I was winning a lot of club-level competitions, and a lot of people saw me and they advised my parents that, okay, if she's really enjoying, why don't you get professional training and see where it goes? But still, yeah, my parents were very supportive, and yeah, they supported me throughout. Yeah, it was good. But yeah, I didn't decide to be an Olympian, but not until when I was 13. The whole point was to just go there, have fun. The thrill of learning new things. As a kid, I used to have a file where I'd come back and write everything that I learned. At the end of the day. So.
And what normally had you have learned? Was it very simple?
Yeah.
Simple things, or?
Yeah, very simple, as in I used to come back and draw stick figures in those papers. Oh, this is how the stroke goes, and this is how you kick, and this is what I learned today. So I was all of 10, and I used to write down everything at the end of the day, and that would really make me happy, the thrill of learning something new every single day. Like the innocence of training, that, oh, today I'm going to learn something new, we're going to do something new.
And when you initially touched the water for the first time, did it feel really organic and natural when you got into it? I'm so interested by swimmers because, they just look so beautiful when they're going through the water. I wonder, did you have that feeling when you first stepped in and you first started swimming at such a young age?
Yeah, it felt very normal, it felt like I belonged here, Every time when so many people have asked me, why backstroke, why not any other stroke? I don't really have an answer to that, because I think backstroke chose me, because even as a kid, if you ask me, oh yeah, I can swim backstroke without getting tired, I can swim it all day long. It was just very natural, you could just shut the noise, be yourself, and flow into the water.
Mm. Yeah. Well, moving on, I think, we talked about Frederick earlier about mental health and sport, and I think we can all say that's been really at the forefront, from Naomi Osaka in tennis to Simone Biles in athletics, as she's stepped away to take a bit of a break. So, Nick, I think you're a good person to start this on. Endurance sports, you have a lot of time to yourself, a lot of time to think. Have you had to overcome any mental health obstacles? And even when you in a marathon, when you get to those last 10 miles, how do you continue going?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, mental health is seen nowadays as good mental health or bad mental health, when actually the reality is that it's on a continuum. We're all human beings. We all experience the diverse range of feelings. We all have those emotions. And I think the key to cracking that code and to being happy as much as you can is to find what you love and be able to make it your purpose. And that is running for me. It happens to be a very good sport for your mental health. You can get out and be in your own head. I'm a big fan of being out in the countryside, by the coast, running along beaches, and you let your mind do the work. It's a form of therapy, like I mentioned earlier. Getting out of the office to run was the beginning, and now running. My last world record was just over 8,500 kilometers of running, and that was running for about 12 hours every day, 2 marathons a day for 4 months. You're in your own head a lot of the time. You suffer, you go through pain, but ultimately you have that framework that you build with your resilience and ultimately endurance.
And how do you push past that pain?
It's difficult sometimes.
We were talking about I'm going to run the Istanbul Marathon, so I'm trying to get some tips from Nick here.
Yeah.
How do you push past?
I think it comes after a while. It comes down to muscle memory, emotionally, physically, the whole spectrum. But initially, it is stubbornness. I think the honest answer is you have a little bit of stubbornness there, and also having a bit of perspective on why you're doing things. I have a great concept that I'm putting myself through pain voluntarily. There's a lot of people in the world that don't have an opportunity to escape pain, suffering, and so it's kind of oddly a way to connect with the rest of the world like that. So when I'm suffering, it makes me think of how fortunate I am, and therefore I can continue.
And the 196 countries you've run a marathon in, run a marathon, sorry. What's been the biggest obstacle? What's been the biggest challenge?
Oh gosh, so that journey, that was a 674-day trip. I was running 3 marathons a week for nearly 100 weeks in different countries each week. 3 countries a week. Challenging initially was finance to fund the trip. Then it was logistics of, I got through 9 passports, for example, of just stamps and visas and things. Physically running, heat. Heat, stray dogs, some war zones, various different places. I ran in temperatures as low as 25 degrees and as hot as plus 59 degrees C.
Wow.
I was in Kuwait. It was very hot. But ultimately, you experience the whole world through that spectrum, so it was great.
And well, Seda, to move on to you, you obviously, as we said before, you're one of very few female athletes in your sport. So I'm sure you've had to overcome a lot of negativity and backlash on social media. How have you dealt with that, and how have you kept yourself focused on the challenge at hand?
I guess I can continue from the next comment. It's all about the purpose, because at the beginning there was not like any positive comment when I said I want to be a racer, and everyone said it's a sport for male. It's hard to start in your age. Are you sure you're also working, etc. I heard lots of negative comments, but I always believe in positivity, because I'm not racing just as Seda. I'm just racing for all the women. I feel that because I wanna. My purpose is to prove that women can exist in motorsports as well, and success is gender neutral. So I have to be there. I have to be myself, and that's why in every step I dream of a young woman who inspired by me. That's what kept me going.
And when did you figure out this was your purpose?
It was around 27 years old, as I told, but it was super hard to find support. It's always hard at the beginning, because when you say I want to be a racing driver, it's really hard to find a support as a woman. So what I have done, I talk everyone around me that I need support, especially as Nick mentioned, financial support, because motorsport is really expensive sport, and I couldn't find it. It could be a failure, like all the persons who wants to race, because it generally happens. They want to race, but they couldn't find a financial support, and they gave up. But I didn't want to make it a failure story, and I get a loan from the bank, and I ordered my first karting vehicle, and everybody said you are crazy, you will go bankrupt, etc. And I said no, I have to do it. I have to try, even if I go bankrupt. I will say okay, I did try and I failed. So this is how I started racing, actually. And when the success is coming with the races, I found some sponsors, and this is what brought me to become a first female race winner in the Turkish Track Championship. So if I gave up at the beginning and I couldn't, and I didn't this risky thing, I couldn't start. And I'm really glad that I did, because every day I get lots of hundreds messages from the social media, especially women. I want to be a racer too, so I'm glad that I'm inspired.
Yeah, I think the common theme today has been that resilience, ignore those negativity and keep on going, follow your dreams. So as someone who's been through so much adversity, what needs to happen for that next generation female track racers to be able to have more support that you didn't personally see or feel?
I guess the key word is never giving up, because when you just sit and say I want to be a racer, no one is going to help you. Of course, you just need to step up a little bit and never give up, because there's lots of obstacles on the way. I guess it's the same for each sport, but especially motorsports if you're a girl. So just don't give up and try everything you can. If you fail, it's okay, but if you push your limits and combine with the dreaming, I'm sure the success will be on the way.
And Mona, you've had to overcome so much as well. Going to Tokyo 2020 at your age is just absolutely incredible. What sort of challenges and adversities did you have to face? And I know that swimming is such an individual sport, so did you have to have any of your own personal mental health challenges?
Yes. Yes, going to Tokyo 2020, I think it took everything of me emotionally, mentally, physically. It was difficult, especially because all of us went through COVID, and it was very challenging because pools were the last sport to reopen in India. Yes, I think for me, mental toughness and athlete mental well-being is very different, very different thing, and often people don't realize, they always associate athletes as, oh yeah, you have to be tough, you have to put out a face, and you have to do everything that is expected of you to do in order to perform. Yes, that is there. We as athletes are always, we are strong, we persevere through tough times, and that's very, very true. But, we are human beings too at the end of the day. As everyone else is, as Nick mentioned, we do go through a whole range of emotions, and sometimes they are heightened too, because the amount of abuse that we put our minds and bodies through every single day is very difficult. So I think raising athlete mental health and the awareness is very important to enhance your performance. And not only the athlete, but I think most importantly, the team surrounding the athlete should understand that, should help the athlete whenever required. Everyone says that it's okay to not be okay, but you really have to act on it. You really have to make the environment around an athlete comfortable, yes, challenging, yes, but comfortable at times when it's really needed, So, you need a bit of a latitude to bring yourself back to normal, reassess the situation, and then perform. It's very important.
Well, performing at such a high level, talk me through your routines, your training routines, and the burden that also brings, not just on the body, but on the mind as well.
Yeah. Well, I think what really helps is I don't see myself as an athlete all the time, and I really want to, help people. I really believe in the holistic development of an athlete, because once you're done with your sport, there is so much life ahead of you that you have to live. There's so much more that you can do. So how I get through is I try to read a lot. I try to talk to myself a lot. I journal. When I write things down, I think it gives me a lot of clarity as what I'm going through, how I'm dealing with the situation. Helps me both professionally and personally. So these are some things that I try to do outside of the pool that keeps me on track. Some of the things that, they work like an anchor for me.
I think that that's often the case. We kind of see athletes as these immortal figures, these heroes. I mean, we sometimes forget that actually you're just like us. You're humans as well. Nick, that kind of leads me onto our next conversation. What makes an athlete successful? What differs someone who wants to do it as a passion to someone who's going to reach the top of their game? I know I've been reading a lot about you, and even after running all those marathons, you continue to want to do more, to want to progress, and you've run a lot of marathons in the UK, and I'll let you talk about that in a second. But is that the key here, always pushing yourself to do more?
Yeah, and I think you've got to push yourself to do more, but in a way that it's what you want. There's a lot of people that come to me asking advice for, I want to be able to run a marathon one day, and sometimes they are in it for the wrong reasons. They're in it because they've seen it on social media or because their friends are roping them in to go and do a marathon. In order to be successful, you've got to want to do it. And that want comes from within. You can't manufacture that. But also, I'm a big believer in failure being a part of success. It's not failure or success. It's success will happen. If I wanted to learn to do something that I'm not good at, I don't know, singing, for example, then I can try and I will fail and and I will stumble over and I will try again. And the success at the end of it is either I will be able to sing or that I've tried. Failure is a part of that journey, and it's the same with running. So to be able to keep that passion going and continuing to push on and do other things, it is about the enjoyment, the passion, having the want to get up and do it. And I don't think that can be created. I think it's a part of you. So as you said, you know, I ran a marathon in every country in the world. I came back, what was that, 4 weeks after I came back, COVID hit and shut down the world. It was very weird for me to be traveling to different countries and then be locked down. The world opened up a little bit, and I then went off and I ran north to south of Italy. So that was 100 marathons in 100 days, zigzagging down through Italy, which was gorgeous but tough. And to try and one-up myself after that, I decided, why not try and run 200 marathons in 100 days, so double that distance. And that is when I set my mission to run around Britain, and that was a mission I did last year. So who knows what will be next? I have a few things in the pipeline, but yeah, keep striving. As long as I'm enjoying it, as long as I have good people around me, and like the others have said, it's if you enjoy it and you've got good people, then happy days.
We'll talk to him about COVID, because I actually hadn't thought about this question, but as a runner, how did you find in the UK, for those who don't know, we're only at one point allowed out once in a day. How did you find that when you're so used to running for hours on end?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I love the outdoors. I love breathing the fresh air, and we talk about mental health. That was a part of why I run, you know, be outside, find that inner peace, and then to be confined to treadmills and indoors, and it ruins your knees running on the conveyor belt. So that was hard. Utilizing my one exercise a day, I would stretch that limit as much as I possibly could and run as far as I could. But I think other things that went on around the outsides there, it gave me an opportunity that I think everybody experiences through COVID. It was terrible, but a lot of people found a positive within it. And for me, that was an opportunity to write a book. It was an opportunity to train less and be with family and friends more. And being all over the place all the time, I didn't have much opportunity to do that. Some good friends I've had from school had to, you know, virtually forget about me for a couple of years until I came back from that expedition. So COVID was an opportunity to reconnect with people, even if it was only on the end of a Zoom call.
I know we're going off a bit topic here, but I find it really interesting to go from being a runner to a writer. What was that process like?
Yeah, great. And I mean, I've always been dyslexic. I really struggled to, you know, by the age of 8. Yeah, by the age of 8, I couldn't really write my own name. I was really severely dyslexic and couldn't read and write very well. And I think through the love of sport, I just focused on, I kind of forgot about the academic side of life and focused on sport. And I came out the other end of it being able to write because it was coming from the heart. I wasn't having to think about it. I wasn't having to recite Shakespeare or, you know, learn. I was just doing what I loved. And that was my very beginning point when you asked me that initial question. It's about having the purpose and the passion and doing what you love, and it just comes. So I love to write. I've got my 4th book coming out soon, just had Run Britain come out, and it's an opportunity to reflect and look in on yourself. But people seem to like them, and they're heavily edited, so it's fine.
That helps, doesn't it, when we're dyslexic?
Yeah.
I'm actually going to touch on what you said earlier about failure is also important for success. Seda, talk to me about that. You've achieved so much, had so many career highs, but what about those failures? Did that actually help you on your journey to get to the top and have that resilience to keep on going?
Of course, there's always ups and downs. When you ask the question, just one race weekend came to my mind. There was, while I not in the track championship, but in the karting part, there was one race weekend, and I was really fast in the trainings. I was like in the top 3 qualification, but just before the qualifications session, my cart was not working. It was like, oh my God, I need to go now, but it was not working, and I couldn't make I couldn't attend the qualifying session, and then I start from the last to the race. But everyone said just don't give up, etc. But I kept my mental health, and I said to myself, okay, I will start from the last, but it's still a race. You need to learn so much things. And then it was another level, and I break like a takeover record in that race, and everyone was like, Seda, what happened to you? And I was, I don't know. know, it couldn't be there if I wasn't lost, I guess. So there's always a good thing in the bad situations. So never giving up, again, I guess the key point in that failures.
And have you always been able to keep a cool head in those sort of situations? Is that really what all athletes have in common, is the fact that they can achieve what they want to achieve despite all the obstacles that surround them?
I don't know. It's really different things to keep your head. But maybe another advantage. I'm also a corporate person. I'm working in a corporate global company as a marketeer, professional. So all that balance between being athlete and professional, just keep me learning that I have to be there. I have to be at the moment whatever I do. So it's like I'm living like a two life, but managing them learned me a lot.
And do you find that hard, juggling between two almost different lives? You're one, an athlete, but also you have your second corporate job on the side. How do you manage to train the way you need to without sacrificing your other work?
It's a bit hard because, in the weekdays I'm working, in the evenings I'm training, in the weekends I'm training at the track, etc. So it's a little bit hard, but when I feel tired, I think like never good happens without being tired. So, and I'm just, turning to myself and remembering my purpose. Why do I do that? And it gives me the energy. And with all these successes, I guess it's what kept me going.
And Mana, what keeps you going? You've had so much success in swimming, and the way that you represent your country, India. I mean, outside of you, though, there's a bit of a gap between other female swimmers and countries such as America. What needs to happen to close that gap, and what makes you so successful?
What makes me... Well, I still think that I have a lot more to offer, and hopefully that I can, be better than what I am right now. I think what makes me who I am is, when you asked Seda the question, how do you keep your head cool in tough situations? I think it's easier said than done, honestly, but you have to really practice. I try to find stillness in my head. I try to find the calm in my head when situations are tough, because that helps me reassess the situation and be mindful without, getting really attached to the situation and getting too emotional. So I think when you're calm, for me, time slows down when I'm really calm in my head. So even when I'm swimming a 50-meter race, I'm so aware of every stroke that I take. I know, oh shit, here I'm taking a wrong. I need to kick more. The hand needs to go here. So I think finding that stillness in your head is very important, not only in sports, but I guess, it'll really help in other fields too, business or whatever it is that you do. So that's what works for me, and that's something that I've developed and learned very recently, and that kind of gives me an edge, because after a point when you've exhausted everything that you can physically do or train, I think your mind gives you an edge over everything else. But yes, coming back to swimming in India, I think we need a lot more racing exposure, not only internationally, but internationally, yes, the government and a lot of other corporates are coming together, pooling in a lot of money and sponsoring us so that we can race international, which is good. But I also think that we need a lot of more domestic racing experience, so a lot of the swimmers can watch us, watch people race, and I don't see why India has a large population, and swimming being a life skill sport, I mean, it should be easy to, develop swimmers, but develop from a grassroots level. So I think that we need a lot more domestic racing exposure, a lot more domestic competitions also to bridge that gap, yeah.
And, talking about the next generation, are you seeing more female swimmers coming up the ranks?
Yeah, I do see a lot of youngsters, a lot of young females coming up. My parents, the society around me, they've always helped me, pushed me to be better and to chase my dreams, to do something that makes me happy. India is evolving in that part, where society is more accepting to women choosing, being bold enough to make certain choices. It's getting there. It was a generational thing to change. Something like this cannot change overnight, but we're there. We're empowering women in different fields to do what makes them happy.
And is that partly why you went into swimming, to be that inspiration for not only everyone here in the studio, but also for everyone at home? And have you had a lot of positive reaction to it?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I feel like, growing up, I've received a lot of love and support from people around me, and that has really helped me get where I am today. So I do think that it is my responsibility to give it back to the society, and, so that whatever I've learned over the last couple of years through my sport, I can, people can learn from it, and I can be a medium where, they can use me, they can use my experience to grow. So I really want to be that person where, I really want to help the younger swimmers, the youth who can, use me and my experience as a medium to grow.
No, it's hugely inspiring, everything you've done. But Nick, we're going to move on to our next section, and I think a lot of people want for you to speak to the audience personally, and we have so many aspiring athletes in the audience, but also people who just love sport. I mean, what do you wish you had known now that you would know when you were starting out, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would have loved to have taken things less seriously when I was a kid, because you can still have discipline and focus and determination and the drive. And I always wanted to be a skier. That was my goal. I was skiing from such a young age, and sport became my life, obviously. But I was quite serious with it. And I think it's quite a good message to say, have your goal, stick to it, but have enjoyment. Like, you can't forget the enjoyment side of it. There's so much pressure in education and in schools, and most of the time, those little things that you end up upset about, angry about, frustrated about, don't matter. And I know that the things that frustrate me now, I'm going to look back on in 30 years' time and think, why was that frustrating? Why was I angry? Why was I sad? Why did that get to me? And so I think we can all start to step back and maybe take a bigger perspective on everything we're doing, and slow things down, enjoy what you're doing, and things don't matter as much. And there's so many people have told me that are twice my age, and I feel it now from when I was much younger. Slow down, enjoy what you're doing.
Yes, I feel like I am always fast-paced. I speak fast, I move fast. But talk to me about, we've talked a lot today about the challenges athletes have had to overcome.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about how you wanted to be a skier. What was it like having to give up that dream? I know you found something that potentially is better for you, but how was it when you initially came to the realization that this wasn't going to happen for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Skiing was something that, you get very old in skiing quite quickly. Your knees and your hips and your backs, and you have injuries, and you end up traveling a lot. And so it was always going to be a short-lived career. Skiers having exceptionally short careers. So I knew there was always going to be something after it. And I think the honest answer is I stopped early because I was trying to do the sensible thing. I was trying to listen to that voice of my parents on my shoulder. You should get a job, you should earn some money, you should buy a house, you should be an adult. And I wasn't ready to do that, but I listened. And despite that feeling tough, you still end up with the positivity out the other end of it. Had I not gone in to banking and had a job, I wouldn't have been able to afford the huge expense of running a marathon in every country in the world. So
how much does it cost?
It was under $1 million, just under $1 million. It was expensive. So very, very expensive thing. And I wouldn't have been able to do that.
And that's in pounds, everyone.
Yeah, pounds, yeah. Had I not been able to step away from skiing, had I carried on, potentially I wouldn't be here now. So I think a little bit of understanding and perspective on the bigger picture is quite important. But setbacks now will always happen. I just take them in my stride now. I'm definitely more laid back and consciously take things less seriously.
Yeah, the beauty of hindsight. And Seda, we talked from Mana about inspiring the next generation, especially females. What sort of advice would you give to these young Turkish women who want to follow in your footsteps?
I would like to take my story as an example, because if I be able to do this, they can do as well. So I will just suggest never ever stop dreaming. If they push their limits and combine it with a dreaming, I believe that they will do. There will always be an obstacles on the way, because as they told me not to do, just sometimes we shouldn't listen all the comments and then look and turn to ourselves and just find that purpose and never ever stop dreaming.
I love that. Never stop dreaming. But I'm just getting the eye to close the chat down. But I can't go without asking you, Mano, what advice would you give to our audience?
Well, I just tell everyone that, bring out the inner child in you, because, kids don't conserve their energy. They play till they drop, they don't hold back. So whatever it is that you do, I think you should just devote yourself 100% into the process, because it's the process that takes you to your goal. So just dive into it 100% authentically, truly, because anything less than 100% in terms of effort is a waste. I mean, you're wasting your time. And yeah, whatever it is that you do, whatever, big thing, small thing, I think you should find a purpose that makes you happy, something that drives you. So that's what I tell everyone. Bring out the inner child in you and just dive into it 100%.
I love that pun, dive into it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been a really interesting panel. And I think today the theme has been this resilience, determination, and achieve the impossible, which all three of you done. So if you'd like to make your way off the stage and have a great round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte.